I used to think silence was comforting, the kind that wraps around you when you're far from cities and people. But now, silence makes my stomach twist. Because when you've heard something move in a place where there shouldn't be anything alive, silence becomes a promise that it's still out there, waiting for you to hear it again. It was the summer of 2019. I was 26, working as a photojournalist for a local paper in Oregon. My three closest friends, Mark, Jess, and Olivia, wanted one last trip together before everyone drifted off into new jobs and cities. We agreed on a weekend in the mountains near Crater Lake. Jess found a listing online for an old set of rental cabins called Pine Hollow Retreat, tucked deep into the forest. The photos looked rustic but cozy. 6 wooden cabins lined up along a dirt trail, half an hour from the nearest paved road.
The owner, an elderly man named Dale, met us at check-in. He looked like he hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks. Wiry gray beard, hands that trembled slightly when he passed us the keys. A faded map was nailed to a corkboard near the office, marking all 7 cabins. He circled ours, cabin number 3, and said, "Stay away from 7. It's condemned. Foundation's bad." We laughed it off. None of us were planning on exploring other cabins anyway. We just wanted to hike, drink, and unplug for a couple of days. The first night was perfect. We grilled food by the fire pit, drank cheap beer, and told stories under a sky so clear it felt painted on. Around midnight, I went to grab my camera from the car and noticed a faint light deeper down the dirt trail, past the last cabin. I thought maybe Dale was checking something, but when I asked him the next morning, he looked confused. "Wasn't me. Nobody's out there. Cabin 7's boarded up."
That day, we hiked one of the nearby trails. On our way back, Olivia pointed out something strange. Bare footprints in the mud near the creek, heading in the direction of the condemned cabin. Not animal tracks, human. Small, almost child-sized. By dusk, a weird heaviness settled over the woods. The air smelled metallic, like blood and rain. Mark joked that it was probably a dead raccoon somewhere nearby. But later that night, we heard tapping on our cabin's window. 3 slow knocks. Jess pulled the curtains back, expecting to see an animal. Nothing. Just darkness and our reflection. But I swear, in that reflection, there was something else behind us for a split second. A shape, pale and tall, standing near the back door. When we turned, it was gone. The next morning, I woke up early. Everyone else was asleep. I stepped outside to get some air and saw the trail leading toward cabin 7. It looked darker than the rest, almost like the trees leaned inward to block the light. Curiosity won. I followed it.
The cabin stood alone, surrounded by overgrown weeds and rotting picnic tables. The windows were boarded, but one plank on the door was loose. Through the gap, I could smell mildew and something faintly sweet, like rotten fruit. I pushed the door, and it creaked open. Inside was dust, cobwebs, and collapsed furniture. But what caught my eye were the photographs. Dozens of them. Old Polaroids, taped along the walls. They were people, families, couples, kids. Each photo had something scribbled underneath in red marker. Names, dates, sometimes just a word like stay or found. I recognized one photo instantly. It was Dale, the old man who rented us our cabin, only younger. He stood in front of cabin 7, smiling. Next to him was a woman and 2 children, all blurred, like the film had melted. And then came the whisper. It came from the back of the cabin near the collapsed hallway. Soft, childlike, almost playful. "Do you want to see it?" Every instinct told me to leave, But before I could move, something shuffled in the shadows. Slow, deliberate steps, like someone dragging their feet across the floor. Then a sound. Click, 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 like a Polaroid camera taking photos. I bolted.
I didn't stop running until I reached our cabin. I was pale, shaking, and barely able to speak. Just thought I'd seen a bear. When I told them what I found, Mark decided to go check it out himself. I begged him not to, but he just laughed and said, "If there's free art, I'm taking some." He left. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. When he finally came back, he looked wrong. His clothes were damp. His eyes wouldn't focus. I asked what happened. He just said, "It's not empty." He wouldn't elaborate. That night, he barely slept. Kept staring at the window, whispering that someone was out there. Around 3 a.m., we all woke up to a camera flash through the curtains. White light. For half a second, then nothing. We packed up at sunrise and drove out. None of us said a word.
A few weeks later, I tried looking up Pine Hollow Retreat. The listing was gone, the number disconnected. I even called the local sheriff's office. They said the property had been abandoned since 2004. The man I described, Dale, didn't exist in any recent records. I asked Mark to show me the photos he took. He said he deleted them because the faces kept changing. He wasn't joking. He looked dead serious, like he hadn't slept in days. I tried to visit the place again last year, just to prove to myself that it was real, but the road leading there had collapsed from a landslide. The forest had reclaimed everything. No cabins, no signs, just the faint smell of old wood and something sweet in the air. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that old Polaroid click from somewhere in my apartment, and I know another picture's been added to the wall in Cabin 7.
We thought we were escaping the city for a weekend. Just some friends, a remote cabin, and a chance to relax. By the time night fell, I realized that cabin wasn't just isolated. It was alive in ways we couldn't explain. My name's Ryan, 27, I work in marketing, mostly online. In October 2021, 4 friends and I rented a cabin in the mountains outside Ellensburg, Washington. The place was rustic. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, just pine forests and a small lake. Exactly what we wanted. The first day was perfect. We hiked, grilled, and drank by the lake, laughing as the sun went down. The cabin itself was charming. Log walls, a fireplace, a small loft. Nothing about it felt off, at least at first.
The first strange thing happened around 11 p.m. I was sitting on the porch smoking when I saw movement in the tree line. At first, I thought it was a deer, but it wasn't. It was upright, tall, and it froze whenever I looked directly at it. I called out jokingly, "Hey, you lost?" It didn't move, just stared. I ran inside laughing nervously. The others teased me. "Paranoid much?" Tyler said. But I could still feel eyes on the cabin, pressing in through the dark. Around 1 a.m., we started hearing scratching noises on the roof. Light, rhythmic, almost like claws dragging. We shrugged it off as raccoons until the noises moved to the windows. We could hear faint breathing outside, shallow, deliberate. I peeked through the curtain. Nothing. But then a shadow moved across the far edge of the trees, and I could have sworn it was smiling. The next morning, we found footprints around the cabin. They were large, barefoot, and weirdly elongated, too big for any of us. They started in the forest and stopped abruptly at the porch. We laughed nervously. Probably someone playing a prank. But none of us had done it. We tried to enjoy the day, fishing, hiking, but as the sun set, the sense of being watched returned. That night, it escalated. Around 11 p.m., we heard knocking from inside the loft when no one was sleeping. Tyler and I went to check. Nothing. Then a whisper. "Come play."
We froze. The voice was high-pitched, childlike, but distorted. No one else was in the loft. Suddenly, the lights went out. Pitch black. We scrambled for our phones. That's when we heard the creaking of the loft stairs, slow, deliberate, as if someone was climbing them. None of us moved, none of us breathed. Then the whisper again, "I see you." A shadow crossed the floor, fast, darting, something not quite human. We ran out the door, no shoes, half-dressed, straight into the trees. The feeling of being followed was immediate. Branches snapped behind us. The whispering followed, close, urgent, taunting. We didn't stop until we reached the car an hour later.
We drove back to the city without speaking. The next day, we returned to the cabin with police, but found nothing unusual. No footprints, no scratches, no sign anyone had been there. I can't explain it. None of us can. Some nights I still dream about the cabin, the way the trees seemed to lean in, the whispering, the shadow that moved faster than any human should. And I've never been camping again. Some places aren't meant to be visited, and some beings aren't meant to be seen. The cabin was one of them.
We thought it would be fun, a late-night adventure through an abandoned hospital. I didn't think much about what might still be inside. By the time we left, I realized some doors should never be opened. My name's Elena. I'm 26, a photographer. In 2019, my friends and I, 3 photographers and a videographer, decided to explore the old St. Vincent Hospital on the outskirts of Spokane. It's been abandoned since the 1980s. Local legends claimed the place was haunted, but we were skeptics. We geared up. Flashlights, cameras, walkie-talkies, and backpacks. The building is huge. 6 stories, peeling paint, broken windows, mold covering almost every surface. Graffiti and faded signs gave it a strange, eerie character. The first hour was thrilling. We documented old patient records, wheelchairs left behind, and crumbling furniture. The air smelled like mildew, rust, and chemicals long gone. Then the noises started. Soft footsteps echoing from hallways that should have been empty, doors creaking slowly, occasionally distant whispers, like someone talking in a language none of us knew. At first we laughed it off, thinking it was rats or the building settling. But around midnight, we reached the 5th floor. That's when we found the door that shouldn't have been there. It was metal, old, unmarked, not on any of our blueprints or maps of the building. Something about it made my stomach twist. Curiosity got the better of us. We pried the door open. Inside was a small, windowless room. And in the center, a circle of human-sized mannequins, sitting upright, facing inward. Their faces were blank, smooth, but their eyes seemed painted on with a disturbing realism. One of the mannequins had a hospital bracelet with my friend Kevin's name on it. We all froze. Then we heard it. Soft, breathing. Not one breath, but dozens, echoing through the walls. It didn't sound mechanical. It sounded alive. a shadow moved across the room. We screamed. Flashlights swung wildly, catching glimpses of shapes that shouldn't exist. Figures crouched in corners, disappearing when you blinked. Kevin swore he saw one mannequin shift its head to look at him. Another whispered, low, guttural, but distinctly, "You shouldn't be here."
We ran. The 5th floor felt endless. Hallways looping, doors disappearing, stairs leading nowhere. I remember tripping down a corridor, hitting my head and seeing something on the wall, a phrase written in what looked like blood. "Everyone who enters stays." We didn't stop until we burst out of the main entrance, panting, bleeding, carrying as much gear as we could. We reported the building to the police the next day. They found nothing unusual. No mannequins, no blood, no secret rooms. Even our photos showed empty hallways. None of us has returned. Kevin moved to another state. I stopped urban exploration entirely. Sometimes when I see abandoned buildings and photos, I feel a tug, like something wants me to go back. And at night, I sometimes hear soft breathing, just at the edge of hearing, echoing in my apartment. Some places are abandoned for a reason. Some doors are better left unopened, because some things are still waiting inside.
People think working alone at night is peaceful. Fewer distractions, no noise, no people. But when you've spent enough nights surrounded by silence and static, you start to realize how much space there is for something to move inside it. And some nights, it moves closer than you think. In 2016, I was 28 and working as a late-night radio operator at a small AM station outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. The kind of job that barely exists anymore. We aired pre-recorded segments, local ads, and a live call-in show that ran from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. I liked the solitude. The studio sat on the edge of the desert, a single building surrounded by flat nothing. From the roof, you could see headlights on Route 66 flickering in the distance like ghost lights. Inside, the constant low hum of the transmitter was oddly comforting, a reminder that something was alive in the dark with me. My job was simple: cue the audio reels, manage the switchboard, and make sure the signal didn't drop. Most nights I'd sip gas station coffee and read old horror anthologies between calls. But one night, in early February, something strange came through the line. The first few calls were normal: local truckers, insomniacs, a lonely woman who always requested old Patsy Cline songs. Then, at 2:13 a.m., line 3 lit up. "WZFP, you're on the air," I said. Nothing. Just static. I checked the connection. Fine. I tried again. "Caller, you're live." Then, faintly, through the static, "Can you hear me?" It was a man's voice. Raspy. Uncertain. Like someone who hadn't spoken in a while. "Yes, I can hear you. Who's this?" A pause. Then, "I used to live there." That threw me off. "Here? In Flagstaff?" "No," he said. "In the station." I actually laughed, thought it was a prank. "Okay, buddy, maybe you mean you used to work here?" Another pause. A long inhale, followed by something that made my stomach twist, the faint sound of metal scraping metal in the background. "No," he whispered. "Under it." The line went dead. I replayed the recording, thinking maybe it was interference, but the words were clear, every syllable. Under it. The next few nights were quiet, though I couldn't stop thinking about that call. I asked my supervisor, Karen, if she'd ever heard of strange transmissions before. She gave me a tired look and said, "This station's been here since the 60s. You'd be surprised what comes through these frequencies. Ignore it." but it didn't stop. A week later, the same voice returned. "You can hear me again," he said, almost pleased. "Who is this?" I asked. "I told you," he murmured. "I used to live there. They built over me." That scraping noise came again, rhythmic now, like nails dragging across a vent. "Where are you calling from?" "Below." The signal distorted, the whole soundboard flickered, and every speaker in the station crackled to life, even the ones not connected to the call. When it cut out, every clock in the studio had stopped at 2:17 a.m. That night, I didn't finish my shift. I sat outside in my car until sunrise, too shaken to go back in. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to know. So the next evening, before my shift started, I went exploring around the property. Behind the building was a rusted hatch, half buried in sand, a maintenance tunnel leading to the transmitter cables. The padlock was broken, like it had been forced open recently. I brought a flashlight and climbed down. The air smelled like rust and wet soil. The tunnel led maybe 30 feet before opening into a small concrete room. Old pipes, empty beer bottles, nothing unusual except the walls. Someone had scratched words into them, dozens of them. Most were just single sentences repeated over and over. "Still here, still broadcasting. He won't stop." And then, on the far wall, written in faded black paint, 2:17. Something moved in the corner. I swung my flashlight. For half a second, I saw what looked like a hand, grayish, thin, reaching out from behind a pile of debris. The skin looked stretched, almost translucent. Then my flashlight died. I ran. By the time I scrambled back up, I could hear the hum of the transmitters rising and falling, like the whole system was breathing. Inside the station, the red on-air light had turned on by itself, and through the speakers, that same voice whispered, "You came down. Now you'll hear it too." The sound grew distorted, layers of static folding over each other until they formed a low, pulsing rhythm that sounded almost human. I slammed the power switches one by one, but the noise didn't stop. It was coming from inside the room now, behind the walls. That's when the backup generator kicked in, and for a few seconds, every light in the building flickered. Between those flashes, I swear, I saw movement through the glass of the recording booth. A silhouette, standing where I had been sitting an hour earlier. It looked like me. Then everything went black. When I woke up, it was 7:12 a.m. The sun was rising through the blinds. The on-air sign was still glowing, but the sound was gone. My supervisor called later that day, furious, said the station had broadcast nothing but white noise for 4 hours straight. I didn't tell her what happened. I just quit that night. A few months later, I drove past the station out of morbid curiosity. It had been shut down, the tower dismantled, the sign taken down. But when I parked nearby and turned on my car radio, the frequency still picked up something faint. It wasn't static this time. It was breathing. Slow, rhythmic, too close to the microphone. Then, clear as day, a voice whispered through the speakers. 2:17. You're still listening. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I scroll through stations just to make sure I don't hear that frequency again. But the worst part is, sometimes the static pauses, like it's waiting for me to speak first.